We had a one-room school. Rigolet was a small, isolated community, very close-knit. People's main sources of living came through hunting, fishing, trapping. Major employee, for lack of a better word, I guess, at that time was a Hudson Bay company. People who hunted and fished often relied on the Hudson Bay Company for their gear. The Hudson Bay Company took about 1/3 of their catch, I believe. We lived pretty much a cashless society, even though a cash economy was on stream since Confederation and a little bit prior to that. But we saw little money. Everybody was practically in the same boat. We were poor, I suppose, but we really never realized that. People took care of one another, relied on one another, treated each other with respect, shared what resources that we had through hunting, fishing, gathering. Everybody pitched in to help launch a boat, by way of example, or build a house, that sort of thing. It was very close-knit. Our school took students up to grade 8, but if a student chose to stay home beyond grade 8, Avalon did her best, our teacher, to accommodate that. But after grade 8 or grade 7, people were sent to residential school in Northwest River or elsewhere, such as Cartwright. I remember my first day of school. I didn't want to go. My dad convinced me somehow to go. He walked me to school. There was no indoor plumbing when I grew up at the school or in our homes. Needed to go to the washroom, so my dad walked me to the outhouse. On the way, he asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I said, I don't know, Dad, maybe a teacher or a doctor, something to that effect. He said, well, son, if you want that to happen, then you have to stay in school. That was a very powerful statement, and that resonated with me throughout my youth and gave me, I think, despite the challenges we had faced as a family, gave me the incentive, I think, to carry on. My parents believed in an education as a way of a better means of life. They were products of residential schools. We relocated to Goose Bay in 1967 as a part of the tail end of the Provincial relocation or resettlement program. I think mainly the reason why they chose to move to Goose Bay was so that we did not have to experience the same things that they did in residential school. Despite that, my family broke apart. My parents split up 3 or 4 years after we went to Goose Bay. And ironically enough, some of us ended up in those residential schools. I myself went back to Rigolet in grade 7 to spend a year with my grandparents. And again, I knew, thinking back on my father's words, if I wanted to go on, I needed to, had no other choice but to go to Northwest River. So I went to see the welfare officer, asked him to pull the strings together and put me in the residential school. I think looking back on that, looking back on my life, I think yes, to a large degree, after I had finished high school and went on to post-secondary studies, both at the community and university level, your mindset changes. You start thinking differently, you're more aware. I look back in terms of post and pre-Confederation, by way of example. Prior to Confederation and prior to contact with the Europeans, Labrador Inuit were self-sufficient in all means, governance, political. We had, again, going back to I think our value base in Rigolet was inherent and based on our Inuit value system of treating with one another with respect, sharing what we had, cooperating to get what we needed, and that sort of thing. And then when the Moravians came to Labrador in the mid-1700s, there was a cultural shift. Life started changing, and that cultural shift is still happening. Some of the benefits, negatives of that contact pre and post Confederation was loss of language, loss of cultural identity. That being said, with respect to education, the Moravians taught Labrador Inuit in Inuk Daniel. They provided trade goods by way of stores, and they trapped buying furs, that sort of thing. But there was, and they were strong in their beliefs as Moravians. And it was a two-way street, I think. In the early days, it was an interdependency. Moravians gave if you complied with their beliefs and their value system, that sort of thing. Inuit are very adaptable. We came to rely on some of the tools and implements to make our life a lot easier. We benefited from some of the trade economy that was happening at the time. When it came time to Confederation and realizing that Indigenous people in Newfoundland and Labrador were left out in terms of Confederation, we were non-existent. And to a certain degree, we feel that way today as well. When you look at social determinants of health, by way of example, the highest rates of suicide, health-related problems such as diabetes, heart disease. We're isolated. We lack the infrastructure. We lack the access to programs and services. We have no transportation per se, other than a coastal boat in the summer. We have no access to our communities by road, so that infrastructure there all adds to, I guess, that whole sense of discourse that I talked about a little while ago. And realizing that, I think, started to change my mindset and always wanted, I think, to use my education in some way to help make life better for our people and for Labradorians in general, and Canadians too, I guess, to a certain degree. I think it was the right decision. As I talked about a little while ago, I mean, Newfoundland and Labrador was a British colony. We were living in poverty. I mean, main resource was fishing, and you were under the auspices and control of the merchants, by way of examples, and those who were in favor, I think, are the ones who could see, had some foresight to see what Confederation would bring. Change in the economy, being a part of a new nation, more opportunities, education, improvement in healthcare, lifestyle changes, life expectancy changed, people live longer, people are more healthy. Yes, I think we're on a better path, and we'll continue on a better path as long as we continue, I think, to go back to some of our, not only cultural roots, but our roots that held us together as a nation before Canada.